Wild eco-hypocrisy from Dame Emma Thompson and Gary Lineker. That's in my take at 10. Plus, could Nigel Farage and Reform UK overtake the Conservatives? We'll debate that shortly. But first, my big opinion. The halo has slipped for Saint Keir Starmer, the most pious politician in all Christendom. He gave Boris Johnson hell over Partygate, even though his enjoyment of a lockdown refreshment earned him the nickname Sir Beer Starmer. And he spent 4 years as leader of the opposition banging on about Tory sleaze, cronyism and corruption. The guy's only been in power for 2 and a bit months, but already looks to be a man in a glass house throwing stones. At the start of his premiership, there were concerns over political appointments to the supposedly neutral civil service. Eyebrows were raised when New Labour grandee Alan Milburn began attending meetings at the Department for Health and receiving official documents, in spite of his own personal investments in the private healthcare industry. Pre-election, a senior civil servant in Sue Gray becomes his chief of staff, an overtly political role. And now she's paid more money than he is, plus a £2 million pension pot. What a time to be a socialist. There was the granting of a prized Access All Areas pass to number 10 to Labour donor Lord Wahid Ali, who has handed the party £500,000 in recent years. There was the gift of thousands of pounds from Lord Ali to the Prime Minister's wife, Victoria, for high-end clothes. Now, this is the same Keir Starmer who accepted VIP tickets worth £4,000 from the Football Association to see Taylor Swift at Wembley Arena. Sir Swifty. And his wife got tickets to another gig at Wembley too. Now, I certainly don't wish to drag Mrs. Starmer into a political row. She seems like a very nice lady and long-suffering, having to listen to her husband waffling on at home about how his mother worked for the NHS and how his father was a toolmaker. She deserves an award, frankly, but not free clothes, accessories and concert tickets. Defending his actions won't cut it for a man in Starmer who has based his entire political brand on being holier than thou, more pure than Mother Teresa, Cliff Richard and Mary Berry combined. This is the chart that will come back to haunt the PM, demonstrating that he has received over £100,000 worth of freebies since 2019, the most of any member of Parliament by a huge margin. But Starmer has previous on this, as the excellent Harvey Jones points out in a cracking piece in the Daily Express this week. While Director of Public Prosecutions, with questions to answer over Jimmy Savile, the Post Office, and most recently Mohammed Al-Fayed, Starmer billed taxpayers for expenses of around £50,000 a year. That's just expenses of 50 grand a year. His successor, Alison Saunders, only billed for a third of that amount. And his combined pension pots are thought to top £1 million, from which Starmer carved out a one-man tax exemption, avoiding a brutal 55% tax on larger pots known as the Pensions Lifetime Allowance. Starmer is facing criticism for accepting a free box at his beloved Arsenal, worth almost £10,000 a year. Now, he said that he needs to be in a box for his security as Prime Minister. Well, here's our former Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak. Remember him? Keeping it real at Southampton FC. Now, Sir Keir's use of a box at Arsenal is not the issue. It is his refusal to pay for it. So why does this whole story matter? Because it's further proof that Sir Keir Starmer's holier-than-thou rhetoric doesn't match his actions. And as a result of this drama, he's earned a range of nicknames that will stick, including two-tier Keir and free gear Keir among them. Plus, he's earning an unwanted reputation too as the greediest Prime Minister in history. Well, the latest is that Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves has admitted to receiving a gift of thousands of pounds for her own wardrobe. There is something seriously wrong at the heart of this new government. Your reaction, gbnews.com/your say. I'll get to your messages shortly, but first, tonight's top pundits, writer and broadcaster Nina Mishkov, former EastEnders star, the one and only John Altman, and ex-newspaper editor and media consultant Neil Wallace. Great to see all three of you. My goodness, lots to talk about. Neil Wallace, a week to forget for the Prime Minister.
Oh, very much so. Well, there is this saying that has been in what used to be called Fleet Street, basically national newspapers, all of my career. And this is what brings down Conservative politicians are sex scandals, but what brings down Labour politicians is always money. Always money scandals. And you know what? I never actually expected him to start so quickly.
And so badly.
The sheer, I'm talking about the amount of money,
Right.
the backhanders, the jaunts, the sheer extravagance of what he is hoovering up every which way he turns. And not only him, he's dragged his wife into it too. But the other thing, as you quite rightly pointed out, it isn't just greedy Sir Keir. Rachel Reeve, the pious Chancellor of the Exchequer, who's going to sting us all in the October budget, warning us about the black hole. Well, she's been shoveling thousands of pounds of free clothes into her own financial black hole, I assume. Oh, yes, there's the Deputy Prime Minister. She's been pocketing freebies from donors, etc. as well.
Including a New York holiday at the expense of a Labour donor, Lord Wahid Ali, in New York City.
Absolutely. That was astonishing because she went there for a long weekend over New Year and she was actually only... it was valued at £1,250. You couldn't go to Edinburgh for that.
No.
Wahid Ali has got this huge luxury apartment in New York. It's a joke that it was only worth that. But don't forget David Lammy. David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary. He's had 10,000 quid as well from a Saudi PR man. They're all at it. And they were all at it even before they won the election and while they were constantly sniping at the Tory government, alleging they were corrupt as well.
OK, well, John Altman, there is another side to this, which is many would argue this is a drop in the ocean compared to Partygate during the pandemic. And, of course, no rules were broken in large.
No, but... just harping back to what we were just talking about. I mean, it's unbelievable, especially being a part of the Labour Party. He doesn't exactly sound like a man of the people, does he? And I'm wondering, sitting here listening to all this, whether or not he's got his fingers in many other pies, which we don't know about.
Yeah, well, you've heard in my big opinion about how he's managed to negotiate an exemption from this rather significant tax on pensions worth over £1 million. It doesn't really sound like a very sort of left-wing approach. So do you think this could cause long-term damage to Keir Starmer?
Definitely. I think it's dreadful. I mean, he started off on a really bad foot, hasn't he? It's just appalling. Don't think I've seen... I follow the news a lot, and I'm quite political in many ways. And I've never seen a Prime Minister get off to such a bad start, actually.
Although, Nina, I mean, is there too much pearl-clutching going on here? I mean, we know that the Tories love donors too, and this is politics.
Way too much. I mean, it is sheer hypocrisy. You cannot call him the greediest Prime Minister in history when you have Boris Johnson as an obvious example of what greed really means. We're not talking £5,000 for Lady Starmer's frocks and a stylist. That's £5,000. We're talking hundreds of thousands of pounds spent on bloody wallpaper and, new curtains and stuff for 10 Downing Street. And that was not declared properly, and the Tory party were fined for that non-declaration. And Boris's donors, unbelievable. There were a lot of Russian donors, and that was way after the invasion of Ukraine. Boris also stuffed the House of Lords with 10% of the population. The House of Lords is about 800,000, and 800, thank God not, but 8,000
members, Lords.
800 members, Lords. And 10% are ones who've been put in there by Boris, including Russians, and you have to ask yourself, well, is he repaying debts? And I'd also like to say there's absolute hypocrisy on freebies, particularly on the part of journalists. If journalists can get this whiff of a ticket to a concert, a football match, a flight on an aeroplane, a freebie holiday, they are there with knobs on, and I bet you were too. I have taken...
Exactly. Neil Wallace, who paid for that rather smart sports jacket of yours tonight?
I think it was the wife, actually.
Oh, there you go. Mrs. Wallace. Is she a Neil Wallace donor? Oh, you're shaking your head when Nina was speaking there.
I mean, look, the Labour Party has a vast majority in the House of Lords. It's simply a matter of fact. So when you come down to what I'm really surprised by, Nina, we quite often diverge on political issues, but the idea that publicly elected politicians, the one who stand up and provide the laws of this country, who lead the mores of this country, set the moral tone of this country, simply by appealing for our vote, are the same as journalists and businessmen. No, you know it's a nonsense.
I'm talking about. I was never corrupt.
Nonsense.
I was talking about the idea of people getting free tickets.
But we don't elect Piers Morgan, do we, or Jeremy Clarkson?
No, we're not. That's all we're talking about. But journalists have their own influence, and so,
yes, but they're not elected.
Never mind elected or not.
But
it's a question of freebies.
That matters.
And besides which, Victoria.
What you're making a point?
I was going to say we need the leaders of our country to look good on the international stage. Look at nobody for 1 minute saying that the Trumps have to say the Trumps are millionaires.
Okay, listen, this is
Macron gets
clearly
Chanel.
kicked off. We are going to continue this with the papers at 10:30 because let me tell you that Freebiegate is all over tomorrow's front pages. But next up in the big story, Nigel Farage tells his conference that Reform UK can overtake the Conservatives at the next